Right. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay. And can you see the slide I've got there?
Yep. Yes, indeed.
Good. Okay. I've got a few slides just to set the picture, and then hopefully there'll be plenty of time for talking and thinking about things. The topic today is software for our one-place studies. So I shall skip through these. Basically what I'm going to do is a little bit of background and then a few lists of some useful types of software and some examples from mine, and then we can talk. Okay. Now then, as you know, we've got when we're doing our one-place studies, there's really no... Actually, I'm getting a bit of feedback now. Are you getting that?
No, you're fine.
Okay, good. I'll live with it. Obviously, if you're doing a normal genealogical study or even a one-name study, there's plenty of packages around to help support that. But in a sense, we're each making up our own way as to how we tackle a one-place study. And also, we've all got our own technical abilities or disabilities and our experiences and our likes and dislikes. So everything's, in a sense, up in the air. And all I'm sharing today is a little bit about what I've been doing, and possible categories for us to talk under. This is, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this is a little bit from the study, my study on the One Place Studies website, and I've put at the bottom there, I do enjoy technology, and a big warning I shall give several times is I like technology perhaps a bit too much. So I may look for it where I shouldn't, and I often use it as an excuse for not doing other research things, so please excuse me on that, but that's me. That's my website, and I've actually put on the website a page with a list of all the hundreds of different bits of software I use, just partly to help me, and to, if I ever manage to hand things over to somebody else, it'll be useful for them, but also in this sort of situation you can look it up, and there's my email address if anybody wants to contact me about it. Okay, now we're on to the meat of what I wanted to share here, with the sorts of software we could think of. I think of them under 4 headings. One is the software we use for sort of recording things. The second is bits of software we use to manipulate, do stuff with. Thirdly, when we want to publish things. And fourthly, sort of everything else. And I realise there's quite a few little bits and pieces in that. A lot of these are not specific to one-place studies, but all relevant. So I'll skip through quite quickly and we can concentrate on the bits you find more relevant. Okay, still with me?
Yeah.
Good. In terms of recording things, obviously, when we're doing text, we can use text processors, word processors. I use Microsoft Word, but I have used LibreOffice and OpenOffice in the past. If you want to do things with spreadsheets, then obviously there's Excel and things like that. I actually do a lot of my work in recording things with Microsoft Access, because my original sort of professional career used databases, and I love doing that, and it's so powerful with all the programming, but I really don't expect anybody else to do it like that. So again, something else that is a big caveat in terms of anything I share. Another thing about recording things that is worth remembering is that you can do a lot by what I've said there, structurally named folders and files. So actually having a proper nomenclature for your folders and various images and maps, you know, putting in the right references into the names of files and folders and organizing them. And then, of course, for genealogical facts, there's the family tree maker, there's legacy. TNG, which I'll come on to, and MyHeritage, and all the others, and I'm sure we all have favourites among those. So that's about recording things. The second sort of category is when you want to manipulate things, and I've got various favourites, most of them free. For images, I do a lot with Earthfund View. I don't know if you've tried that. For example, if I want to clip them or change the file size or put in a watermark or things, it's very useful. All free. I have used dictation software a bit. I've treated myself to that at one point when it was half price. And when I've been transcribing documents, I've done that with dictation sometimes, rather than just typing in. And then OCR, I've used that sometimes for, obviously not with handwriting, but with typewriting to get it into a machine-readable form. Various bits of software for manipulating PDFs and writing to PDF. I found that if I need something, for example, I use GEDCOM for transferring genealogical information, which is a standard method, a standard structure, and I wanted a way of checking whether I had the right structure. And there's this VGEDX. I just Googled it and found this, and I've found really with Google I can find almost any software, and it's usually free, that I need, all these bits and pieces. The third sort of category, which is where I started to get more serious in thinking about the one-place study, was publishing. I've used PDF. I've printed to PDFs now, and I've used Blurb and a few other things for. You're familiar with Blurb, and sort of on-demand book publishing. I've no, you haven't.
Yeah.
Well, I'll show it to you when we come back to my face. I can show you. I've developed a set of maps, images, and just put them together into a book, and you can buy it online. I think it costs £13–14, sort of on demand if you want it. But a useful way of publishing. And then, of course, if you want to do presentations, there's PowerPoint, like I'm doing now, or there's I've done them with my website before now. The third thing on the list there, in terms of publishing, the TNG, the next generation of genealogical site building, is where I started getting into proper website building in genealogy. Now, again, I'll come back to that in more detail a bit, and if you want to, we can look at it, examples, but it's basically an online way of manipulating genealogical information. And it's got lots of templates, so you can choose colors and styles, and it's got mods, things that are modifications that other people have done to improve it and change it to be how they want. There's many more than 1,000 people using this software to publish their genealogical stuff online.
Is it public domain?
It's not public domain. It is open source. I'll come back to it in a bit more detail, if I may. And then CMS. CMS stands for Content Management Systems. I know one or two. Kim, you use is it WordPress you use?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's also Drupal, and a simpler thing is Weebly. But with WordPress, I use WordPress, and it's integrated with TNG, so it means it's very flexible, the sorts of things I can do. And of course, with WordPress or Drupal or the others, there's lots of plugins. So I'm probably using about 50 different plugins to do bits and pieces that I want to do, which is wonderful. Most of them are free, and the work's done for me. There's also, to support this sort of thing, and again, I in brackets, I'll say, remember, I'm quite technical and I enjoy this sort of thing, so maybe the way I do it isn't very suitable for other people, but never mind. To support the technical stuff, there's the thing I put there, WOMP, is a way of putting a website on your own computer. So I do all my development on the computer here, and then when I'm ready, I move it to my public website. And do testing and things with Firefox. So that whole area of publishing things, I think, is very interesting. And it's something I've been looking at and working on. And we can come back to that. But the fourth area is sort of everything else. Things that some people talk about but don't do. Some people do. I like to do backups, for example. Security. I'm using VeraCrypt now for security. Not much on my genealogical stuff, but are you familiar with VeraCrypt? Or
No.
if you want to actually secure something, sort of so it's totally encrypted, there's these free systems for doing it, and then of course antivirus. And one of my favorite little bits of software is that auto hotkey. Anybody familiar with that?
Yeah.
No.
It's a little bit of software, again free, that enables you to set up basically shortcuts. Now Needingworth, you see, my village is Holywell cum Needingworth, and I'm lazy, so I can now type in basically #HCN, and it will automatically fill that out for me all the time, and my email address and lots of other things I've sort of done as shortcuts. That's just a little bit of software to do hotkey stuff. I'm also very lazy about passwords, and I store them all. I happen to use RoboForm, but lots of others for signing onto websites and stuff. And then there's the various sharing things. I tend to do things by myself, so I don't share a great deal. But obviously Skype and this Google Hangouts and Dropbox and TeamViewer is a way of you having access to my computer if I let you, so you can actually control it, or the other way around if we agree. And there's a little bit of software I have developed for somebody about 50 miles away, and to save me going over there and just for 10 minutes work, I can use TeamViewer and access their computer. Quite nice. Not very relevant to One Place Study, but MailChimp, I use MailChimp for my mailings to do with my One Place Study, because I used to just do an ordinary mailing using the BCC line, but I found I got a lot of spam problems, and so I use MailChimp for that now. That's a free, for low use way of doing quite nice mailings. And then there's the various maintenance stuff on the computer. Okay. Just a couple of notes before we start sort of discussing. I haven't mentioned maps. And now some of you will know that I'm quite keen on maps, and I'm actually doing a research project, hopefully with others of you, on mapping. Susie, when's the destinations coming out? Is it
Tomorrow.
tomorrow? Excellent. Well, March through to April destination. As a little article about what we're doing, and I've got a forum, and so I'm not covering mapping in this one, but we will be talking about it again, and hopefully we'll do another hangout maybe early next year on it. There's lots of possibilities on mapping, and I'm going to be trying and showing the sorts of things that can be done. Very relevant for our One Place studies. Before we go to discuss just a little bit more on this TNG, it is commercial in that it costs $32.99 for a one-off license, but it's developed by a guy who lives in Salt Lake City, and I think he used to work for Ancestry. But he's developed it over the years. It's nothing to do with Ancestry, but it's commercial in that sense. You have to pay, but that's all. It's open source. You get all the source, and you can change it as you want. And there's hundreds of people doing things to it and supporting it. If you've got any problems, the community will help. So that's rather nice. And it is rather flexible. And if you're interested, I can show you more on my website, the sort of things it enables. There are other ways of putting genealogical stuff on the onto the web. The thing I liked about this is I could see myself putting, as I've put there, extra one-place elements into it. So not just people, but say dwellings and streets and historical stuff, I could see myself actually adding to it to enable it to be more what I wanted. And by integrating it with WordPress, there's a lot of other things that I've been able to do with the website and stuff. Okay, so that's the end of my little chat. Basically, it's over to you and what sort of software you've used, what experiences you've had, what would you like to see, what sort of, do you want to see anything more of what I've shared there? I shall stop this sharing and you're back to my face, I hope. Are you back to my face now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, where do you want to go from here? Do you want to share any of your experiences, or?
Well, shall I start?
Yeah.
I use the Master Genealogist, and I've used it quite extensively. And what I like about it is it's referred to as the one-stop project manager for genealogy. But of course, like most of these bits of software, the more you can tailor it to fit your needs, the harder it is to actually make it work. If you're looking for a software that you can use straight out the box, this isn't it. So it does require quite a bit of effort to make it work. And the downside is that at the end of last year, they announced they were stopping supporting it. So now I've got to look for something else. And I'm really upset about that. I mean, I could carry on just using the Master Genealogist until it just dies. But the trouble is there's so many new and exciting bits of software. And like Peter, I love software. And any excuse to go and fiddle and play with things, and I'm off down another rabbit hole quite quickly. So I love the Master Genealogist, and one of the things that I really like is that there's a companion program called Second Sight, which you run, and it takes all the data out of your database, the Master Genealogist database, and builds your own website for you. So my website, devonandfamilyhistory.org.uk, is built entirely using those two programs. Well, perhaps not entirely, because for recording transcriptions I use a software called Custodian, which is like a very heavy-duty Excel spreadsheet, but there's predefined spreadsheets for every single type of bit of data you want. So back to the ordinary baptisms, marriages and burials, there's things for census recording, historical directories, any type of piece of data you want to transcribe, there's a predefined form for. And if you get something turning up out of the blue, like, say, the 1939 register, you can go and make your own custom design form. And what I do is I put all the transcriptions in there, and then export them to an Excel spreadsheet. And then I run Excel macros on it to split it all up into surnames. Because in my experience, when somebody's looking for some data, they're not saying, I want to find everything about I don't know, parish chest type records. They're saying, I want to find out about my family of blogs who came from this parish. And so the ability to search on surnames, for me, is quite key. So,
Susie, can I just interject there briefly? I've something I've got to say. When I was doing transcribing and stuff a lot, I actually found Word very useful for separating out surnames and things, shifting between text and tables.
Right.
I love that.
Well, I like Excel. Well, I like Custodian because then it exports it in spreadsheet format, and I can run Excel macros on it. My husband is an Excel macro guru, and so I can take a spreadsheet that's got 20,000 records in it and have it run through and put, where you were talking about structured folders, his Excel macros takes all the data, puts it in structured folders, creates spreadsheets and creates HTML files for me, ready for Second Sight to automatically upload it to the website.
That
So
sounds
there's very little manual intervention.
I use GenScriber for transcribing, which is free, and the reason that I like it so much is that it has the picture, or the sort of JPEG of whatever you're transcribing from at the top, and then a spreadsheet at the bottom. So you type in whatever and save it as a CSV file, and Excel can open CSV files.
Excellent.
I
GenScriber.
really like it. GenScriber, yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'll have to have a look at that.
Oh, I showed it. It's wonderful. There's another one called Transcript, which is literally the JPEG at the top and then a blank space at the bottom. So you could be sitting there, you know, typing away and you're reading at the same time, which is wonderful.
Yes.
But GenScriber is actually in rows and columns.
Right, yes. Yeah.
Anything else people like to use?
Yeah, well, Peter, I think, you know, I have a technical background too, but I'm not clear that I'm quite the strength that you do in your background. But I use a lot of the tools that you do, but actually I use very few tools. I kind of like a small tool set. And so for my one-place study, I started with just simply Excel. And for transcription of anything, I use 2 screens. I need like really big screens. And but I use Excel, and originally I loaded that into a very simple WordPress database, WordPress website for sharing, and that served me extremely well. But as I say, that particular website is very, very simple. And then when I took my diploma course, I had the opportunity. I was not happy with family free software for my one-place study. It's not going to meet my needs. And in that course, I learned Access, and it just met my needs to a T. I like databases and stuff, and I've got a database set up with all the linkages and all kinds of stuff, and I'm just blown away by how easy it is to answer questions, and anything I can come up with now, almost I can just write a little query and find the answer. So I absolutely love that. And what I'd like to do is go ahead at some point and move portions of that into my WordPress system on MySQL, which is, I think, a very easy moving over of tables. Wow. Didn't like that idea.
It's the Star Trek transporter sound. Mail.
So I'm excited about things like on my website. If I want people, right now there's a search across the site where they can pick up all the records for any surname or stuff, but they have to at least put in a portion of the surname. And with so many variant names and variant spellings, I'd like to set up a little database table where they can search for whatever variants I've come up with, and that I can show them all the variants and things like that. So I'd like to expand to that sometime. I do use Word for transcripts like wills or narrative type transcripts. And in WordPress, I load all my Excel tables, all my record transcripts. I just load them directly into a plugin called TablePress, which I just love. On the Guild website, I'm using something called My Data Place instead of TablePress. Either one has some really wonderful advantages.
Sorry, Kim.
Yeah.
I didn't catch a couple of those names. Can you just say them again?
TablePress is what I use to just load my Excel CSV sheets, and I just can load those up so easily. So, and in addition, Google search picks all those up. So if I load hundreds of records of baptism records, Google search actually finds the individual ones. So if people are searching for names, they get a lot of my names in Gretna Valley. And I use on the Guild website, I use my data station, which is another tables plugin, and it has the advantage of taking SQL queries as input, as well as Excel files and the like. So, so both of those are hugely central to what I try to do on the website. I have not started doing community reconstitution on my one-place study yet, and I find it has huge challenges. And my place, people came and went extremely frequently, so I don't really get these great long chains that people staying for centuries too much. I get a lot of comers and goers, and it takes it hard to kind of extremely true approach. In my one name studies, I use legacy, which I'm very happy with. And I just load, in my one name studies, I load my GEDCOMs to tribal pages, and have done for probably, years now, which is just so simple. But ultimately, I need to find a way to for my community reconstruction for my one place study. And I may use legacy, or I may use access. I've looked at, yeah.
What I was going to say, Kim, if you want to get data from Access into a genealogical system, I've written a translator to create GEDCOM files from Access, so which is how I move my data. So if ever you need that.
Oh, I would like that, Peter.
I've got somebody at the door. Hold on a moment. Carry on speaking.
Where was I? So I've looked at TNG, what Peter was talking about. And I don't know about you guys, but I have to say, every time I look at a TNG site, I find it very complex. And I don't know if they're just set up that way, but I find it hard to kind of, there's so much data to choose from on TNG that I really find it a bit daunting. So I've kind of stayed away from TNG, but I probably will look at it some more. But Peter, yeah, I think I'll probably be quite happy to get Access, and if I can get something like a GEDCOM. I think I asked somebody about a GEDCOM translator, so that I would be very interested in that. Because as I say, I'm not convinced on TNG. It just feels very complex to me.
I think it probably is rather complex. There's certainly lots of people who use it without IT experience, but as far as I'm concerned, it's it certainly repays my having knowledge about it. Yeah. I daren't recommend it, but I think it is so powerful, and it does all the things I want from it and more.
I think it's the power of it that gives me the problem.
Yeah.
I go in and I get assaulted by so many choices and so much data, and I really find it difficult. I just want to find nice. I can find all the individual records of people and every source and everything, but I just find it hard to kind of unify all the information, kind of an overview. And I think I have now seen some sites, some TNG sites where people have really put attention to trying to reduce the complexity of what people see, what others see on the site. But I don't know. I'm just not quite there yet.
I use TNG for one of my one name studies, and I think if you don't have all of the data, then a lot of the links are useless. Like if you don't have pictures of gravestones or things like that, then some of the links are useless, and they're very overwhelming.
And I find, Roz, I don't know if it's a function of the package, but I find that a lot of people on the TNG site leave all those empty links there. So if they have no pictures, or they have no gravestones, they have no monumental inscriptions, they have none, I keep clicking on all these menu items over the top, down the left, and so many of them are empty.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Peter, is it hard to turn those things off if you're not?
I don't. I'm obviously using it in a different way within the WordPress context, and as far as I'm concerned, I can get it to do exactly as I want. But I do see lots of conversations about between people saying, how do I do so and so, and how do I do so and so, and almost all the time, people's answer it is answered in such a way that yes, you can do it, yes, you can turn those menu bits off, but it may not be actually obvious as to how you do it.
Right.
I think
I looked at WordPress plugins to see, are there any decent plugins that just will draw me some nice pedigree charts, you know, with my family tree data or stuff like that. But I haven't really found anything that jumps out at me as to be good. So if there's something you know of that uses headcoms and does a good job of quick playing, that would be helpful.
Yeah, well, I've got, obviously within TNG, I've got, on my site, I've got the pedigree charts and ancestor charts and descendant charts and all that sort of thing, and that seems to work quite nicely.
The other thing that I confess, when I use Legacy, and I've been using it for years, but years ago I didn't go the quote-unquote event route and put down a little tiny fact for everything about every person. I would have spent the rest of my life doing nothing but recording facts. And of course everything. So I tend to, in Legacy, I just put my notes on people, okay, and I'll put general notes, and I'll identify my sources, and I'll identify and kind of make a little story for each person. And so I don't have all those data items, you know, event items filled out. And I didn't know TNG. I don't know. I think you have to do all that.
I don't think you have to do anything in a sense. I think the encouragement is there because of they like the discipline of it, you know, and get all the evidence and sources and things. I don't think you have to.
Yeah.
There is some other software that's under development at the moment, and it's called HRE. I don't know whether any of you have heard of it. It's a historical research environment. And whereas the traditional family tree type software, everything hangs off of an individual. Well, this is going to hang off a place, or sorry, as well as the place. So it could hang off an individual, but it could also be hanging off of locations. And it's under development at the moment. I've volunteered to be one of the beta testers. So I haven't actually seen anything yet. We're still collecting requirements and doling out who's going to do what to whom and how often. But that promises to me to be something that's really, really interesting. Again, it's going to be open source and free. So I'm keeping my eye on that. It's called HRE. If you Google it, there's it's some ex-developers of I was going to say the Master Genealogist, but I'm not sure whether that's true. I found them through the Master Genealogist forum, because a lot of the people who are leaving the Master Genealogist are obviously looking for other software that we can use for place type information, and so a lot of people have are looking at and have joined this forum. I think if you Google for HRE or historical research environment, you should be able to find. I think there's a Roots web.
Let me say, by the way, when you Google HRE genealogy, because if you Google HRE, you'll get the Holy Roman Empire.
Are you familiar with that too, Roz?
Sorry?
You're familiar with that, with HRE as well?
Nope, never heard of it before.
Okay.
I could email out a link to if
Yeah,
people are
I tell
interested.
you, Susie, that's a little interesting to me, and the reason is, and I think I'm pretty good on Family Tree software. Years ago, I used Family Tree Maker until they re-architected it and kind of busted
Well,
it.
that's the point at which I moved to the Master Genealogist.
Yeah, that's when I moved to Legacy, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I still believe that the Family Tree software is centered on individuals and not place. And I've never been happy. Place always feels like an afterthought and does not allow, in these Family Tree packages, it doesn't allow you to input the kind of information that you have on place from a one place study versus what you can put on individuals, because they're absolutely structured around the individuals. So I find what you've just said, and that's the reason that I ended up with Access. I could not find anything that looked any good to me for what I was trying to do with place. And I want to have as much information and as much interest in looking at things from a place perspective or location or residence perspective as I do from a person perspective. And in the case of place studies, you have both. So that was really why I went the Access route. And so it would be interesting if the HRE software doesn't lose all that you can do regarding individuals, but adds as much flexibility regarding place. That would be interesting.
That was my
Legacy. I use Legacy, and it's based on an Access database.
It is, Ross, but I still think it's Family Trees. I mean, and I like Legacy. I use it for my one name studies, but it's based on individuals, and for locations, I don't find it has.
Well, what I tend to, my sort of goal is to create family linkages within Southpool. So, for instance, I find it useful. I'll put all these people, like 100 people in,
Yeah.
and then I'll link them together so that, you know, Fred had George, had Elizabeth, had Fred, and then I can see them that way through Legacy.
But I want just as much.
goal, see?
But I want just as much. I'd like that. I want to be able to put in. Oh, let's just pick an arbitrary one, East Lake Farm, and say, I want to know all about the history of East Lake Farm. I want to know everybody who lived there. I want pictures of it that I have through time. I want deeds. So I want to be able to associate information. I want to be able to associate it with people, but I want equally to be able to associate it with any given property, building, location.
I'm with you on that, Kim. I'm very much doing that. That's why I like Access for that. I can do that.
Yeah.
And in particular, you've got complications like I've got one building that was 3 buildings to begin with, then it was joined together, and then it was split up, and then there was an extension added, and then that extension turned into a separate little dwelling.
Yeah.
And you've got people who are sub-dwelling, some on one census, one family had the top floor of one of the buildings, and I want to be able to cope with that sort of thing and look at it from the dwelling, the building point of view. Yeah. I'm interested in the fields as well, and which farmers owned and leased, and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, and also things like households. Okay, not just families, but
yes.
Households associated with any property through time. And I also have to deal a lot with not just one place, because obviously lots of my people were born in, moved from, or moved to other places. So even for towns and villages and other locations, I need to have those as locations as well as property. So I find that very hard, Roz. I just haven't quite discussed that on the Family Tree software.
The only thing I can suggest, if you do it in Legacy, is to tag people who say, number 1 tag is East Lake Farm. And
Yeah.
everybody who ever lived in Eastlake Farm put a tag on them, but then
Yeah.
that's still just people.
It is, and I still can't go ask then. Like in Legacy, I'm really good at searching and tagging and stuff, and I can search for anybody. You know, I can find them out there, even if I've got all my information in general notes. I can find everybody. I may have to use a lot of tags and a lot of searches, but I can find them. But I can't. I don't know if I go the event route. I find the searching and recording features very limited. Okay, so I can say record all those places or residences, for example, in events. But I don't really haven't found a good way of recording on my place information in there, you know, in the way that I can on individuals and families. But I like access, and as I say, I just think that all that has been built for the family history community, not for the place studies or community studies. And if HRA and others are looking at that, I just think that's encouraging.
Anything else to share?
Well, yeah, the other way that you can sort of do it is if you use Wikitree. I don't know if you're familiar with Wikitree, because it's collaborative. It's rather than just saying this tree is mine. What they're trying to do is link absolutely all the trees everywhere. But I've got a one-place study there, and what you can do is you can put little pages of it separately. So you could have a page, the Eastlake Farm page, with pictures and the history and whatever, as well as the main sort of tree, which is people. You're not going to be able to search left, right, and centre every 5 minutes. You know, once you've made it, you've made it. You've made that page. I mean, obviously you can edit it, but once it's made, there it is. That might be some sort of a help if you wanted to, you know, do both. I really can't think of anything else.
Well, I do that bit of it in, so having exported my TMG data into my website, the second site allows me to create as many pages as I like on whatever subject. So, for instance, I've got a page that lists all our local pubs. So, over the course of the last 500 years, we've probably had somewhere in the region of 20 or 30 pubs in the village. And I want to record at what point individuals lived, ran, or managed that pub. So, I've got a page called The Pubs, and then that links to the Angel. And then within the Angel page, I've got hyperlinks that go to all the individuals who've ever lived there. And once I've made that, I don't need to go back and do anything. I can just leave it, and it just sits there and it rebuilds itself every time I re-upload.
Do you have to link those? Do you have to make that up individually, Susie, or if you record 10 individuals who are associated with that angel or whatever, will it automatically pull together that information? And
it does some of it. So on my website, there's like a locations page. So every tag in my database that's got an address will appear in that list. And if you click on the angel, it will take you a page to the location for the angel. But I've also done a separate page, because it gives me more control, where the IDs for each of the individuals, I can just list the IDs. So ID number 34 and 2007 were at the pub at these dates, and then it just rebuilds it every time. It gives me a bit more control than leaving the software to do it itself.
I've done that sort of thing within my TNG WordPress thing, but it's, you know, I do need to create it specifically for that. I can see with Kim, in a sense, my desire is that the dwellings and the places are as important in the whole concept of things as people, and you know, it's sort of as natural to report on it and see web pages about it as with people, and that's what I'm hoping to be able to do with eventually, maybe.
And do you think, Peter, that's going to be a reasonably manageable thing to do with TNG?
Oh, I could certainly see how to do it, but I think it would make it even more complicated than you find it. I mean, I have my access model is very, very complicated because that's how I do things, I'm afraid. I doubt if I explain it to anybody else, and I'm very reticent to you know, suggest other people go that way, but it's just how I like doing it. And I certainly within TNG I can see exactly how I would do it, and I would have you'd be able to search on buildings and everything else and see who was in it, because the basic underlying data's there. You know, certainly within my database, and I can see how I can add tables to TNG to link it and connect the sources and the images to the places as well as to the people and the events and all that sort of stuff. You know, the structure's fine. I can see how to add to it. But then again, I wouldn't promise anything would be easy to use or easy for people to set up for themselves.
Well, I think you've already done some quite remarkable things with your website and the like. It's really quite impressive.
I enjoy it. I love TablePress, by the way. You mentioned TablePress, and I've used TablePress a lot for things.
Yeah.
I keep meaning to get, because it's free, and you know, he says, "How about buying a coffee?" And I keep meaning to offer him a virtual coffee. I
donate to that guy. It's just such good support, and they're flexible, and you can get really nice formatting. But yeah, very good. But I was really surprised at the bonus you get for having every doggone data record you got picked up by Google search. I mean,
yes.
That may not be appreciated by people who have to put up with 10 pages of nonsense every time they type in one of my names, but I kind of like it.
Well, Wikitree does that as well. Google picks it up.
Yeah.
Picks up anything you've got on Wikitree.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Anything else we want to cover? Share about?
I think something that I'm quite keen on, although I won't say I'm a particularly good exponent of it, is folder structures for controlling my data. And that it gets a bit complicated, especially where you've got a marriage certificate and you put it in under the husband's surname or the wife's or both or somewhere else. And I have a folder structure that generally is reflected. It's very similar to what's on my web page, although the folder structure came first. So under my place, for instance, I've got a folder called Debenham, and then underneath there I've got the churches, and then underneath the churches I've got each of the individual churches. I've got another one that says the pubs, and then list under the pubs. But I've also got the people, and underneath the people is all the surnames. So there's probably about 4,000 or 5,000 surnames listed individually, which are all created dynamically by my husband's macros. So I don't have to worry about doing it. But I try and group surnames. So for instance, Abbott, there's about 6 different spellings for Abbott, and I have one field in my custodian data that is a normalized version of Abbott. So Abbott spelt in any one of 6 different ways will all come in that field. And as I find new data, if it relates to an Abbott, then I put it in that folder. And I tend to be quite disciplined about that. So every single piece of information is digitized and stored in my folder structure. I'm less good at storing bits of paper, but I'm very conscientious about storing electronic ones.
I found it a wonderful way of dealing with certificates. You know, with a marriage certificate, you put it under the husband or the wife. What you do is you just have a great big dump of certificates, a folder that you dump everything in, and you put shortcuts in surname folders. So you can put a shortcut to the marriage certificate in the husband's folder and a shortcut in the wife's folder.
Yes. Well, I'm not keen on the dumping strategy, but what I do is I put the certificate in the husband's folder and then a shortcut from the wife's.
Yeah.
So that I can always find them no matter which leg of the tree I'm going down.
Yeah.
I must admit,
in fact, it's mainly marriages that are an issue.
Well, when I mentioned that about structural filers and folders, it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek because I know it's very, very useful, but I don't do it because what I do is basically every document I give a number, and in my database I store the information about that, and so document number 4378. You know, I've got recorded everything about it and any links and everything else. So I go through the database and I can automatically pick up that document. And you know, I do it in a structured way, but through that, and I can quite see there's different ways of doing that. I think, you know, there's quite a lot of documents I can think of where, for example, a will or a letter, there's all sorts of ways I could see of characterizing it, you know, and classifying it. But I do think you need to be structured about it.
Well, I'm even less structured than you, Peter. I certainly keep everything, virtually everything, electronically, but I have very simple folders like marriages, baptism, you know, wills. I do segregate things like my transcripts, say my Excel, that are in Excel files or that are narratives, into separate folders, but I do not hold the organization of my data in my folder structure. I don't think I hold some of those linkages in Excel, obviously, because, but mostly in my database. I don't try and do that in files and folders.
I suppose actually,
you know, I just say, you know, I've got it, that I know where they are and stuff, and if I have an image, you know, obviously in the database I'll link to it, but I don't even have numbering systems within those files. I just have names and stuff like marriage certificate of, you know, John Eastlake and Johanna, or, you know, and get a date on it. That's kind of the names I use. You know?
Well, that's what I would prefer, actually, to have something written, like Will of Jacob Ball, rather than document 4378. How do I know what 4378 is?
Actually, I have misrepresented what I do, because I conceptually call it number 4378, but within my database, I generate that, and as part of that, it's got the number and it's got the description of it. So the file has actually got both things in it, but I can automatically within Access pick it up and I can search it. When I send those that I do send to the website, I strip out all, I just leave the number there, I realize. So I try to get the best of both worlds. But then with, you know, with programming in Access or whatever, you can get it exactly how you want, which is rather nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I depend very much on maintaining indexes in my Excel spreadsheet. All my indexing is done really there, and I can upload that to a database, and I can use it to find stuff in my files and folders, but I don't do it in the folder structure itself.
I think it doesn't matter what it is you're using, whether it's bits of paper, folder structures, software, whatever it is, once you start going down that path, it's really, really difficult to change tack and decide to do something different. And even if you start up another one-place study, would I structure another one-place study in the same way as I've done this? Probably would, because it's easy to just copy that structure and just do the same again. Whereas if you start doing another one-place study and you use a different piece of software or a different folder structure, you're going to get right old muddle. Or I would anyway.
Yeah, I found, Susie, mainly on my one name studies, because when we first came into genealogy in like 2006, we were studying my husband's Estill family. And then I started the Eastlake one name study in 2010, and I actually had learned a lot, and I did a lot of things differently, I must say. And then starting the one place study in 2013, again, I was just learning all the way along, and so I think I get better and better at it. The problem it gives me is that now when I look back at my Estill study, which is still an active study, whenever I get 2 minutes to spend on it, there's so many things I'd like to fix up in it and better. Now that's really hard to find the time. You know, sometimes I even think, oh, wouldn't it be nice to kind of start over? And although I've dug out a lot of the stuff, it'd be nice to start over in terms of how I organize it. And, you know, I could get that cleaned up a lot, but I think I just keep learning over the years, and I'm trying to get better, and I'm trying to document better, and I think that I get more and more appreciative. Maybe with retirement, I don't know what, but that someday I really hope somebody else can understand my research.
That's an important thing, actually, and I've written on my to-do list a continuity plan.
Yeah.
Which basically is, how on earth am I going to get anybody else to do anything once I've gone, or gone doolally or whatever?
Yeah.
And if I make my software or my systems or my storage too complicated for anybody, then there's no way it can happen.
Yeah.
That's something to bear in mind.
Yeah, I'm starting to think I've got some ways forward on the one name stuff because of the Guild's members website project, but on the one place stuff, I've got still quite a lot of thinking to do. And what I really would like to find on the one place stuff is if I have a fellow researcher who has some overlapping interests with mine in terms of locations and everything, you know, maybe somebody like that could someday take on that work. I really don't want to lose it all, and I hate to see other people too, you know, because they continue with the studies for some reason. But it's so valuable, critical to be able to build on what others have done rather than everybody starting from the other piece of software I just wanted to quickly mention. There's 2 other pieces of software that I would like to do more with. One is contact forms. So on my Bratton Covelli site, I used a contact form, and it had a little extension that gives me a contact form database. So every time I get a contact through the site, that's recorded in the database. And that's really helpful to me, and I can go back and remember those things and reference them. I have a rough equivalent on tribal pages, and that at least people sign the guest book, but it's still not quite as good. And I'd like to probably, for contacts that come not only through my Bratton Covelli site, but in other ways, I'd like to get more disciplined in recording my contacts in a database that I can search and always keep track of. The other thing I've tried to start using a couple of things is it's a bit of a research log, and I think this will be important someday in trying to turn over to people, but where I kind of describe the things that I do that are not perhaps that intuitive, and I was just starting to use OneNote, and I think whether it's OneNote or Evernote or whatever, I think it's important to almost have a bit of a research journal or something that at least goes over some of the key topics about how you go about your research.
That may also be useful for negative information. You know, where you've done some research and not come up with anything.
Yeah.
It's worth. I mean, I've done that several times where I've done the same search, and it's.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing I don't like about OneNote is, you know, I get started and I have a burst of energy and fill it out faithfully, and then I miss 3 months and I go back to it, and I kind of like to change the dates on my notes to at least look at, and it won't let me change the dates on my notes, but other than that, it's fine. But some sort of record of kind of the key topics that might be of interest to somebody else who was trying to really understand my research or possibly even take it on.
Use spreadsheets, they don't have dates on them.
What's that?
Use spreadsheets, they don't have dates on them.
I'm very much aware of one of the lines on my introductory little presentation was we're each searching in our own way for a way to do a one-place study. You know, there's no one right way, is there? There's no one right set of software or anything. You know, we're struggling with it. We're progressing it. I must admit, I am led a little bit by enjoyment. You know, if I enjoy doing something, then I'll likely do it that way.
There's nothing wrong with that, Peter.
No, I know.
But I would like to see at least one of the commercial companies. I'd love to see if they just put a little attention. I agree, Roz. A number of these products are built on Access databases. There's no reason why you couldn't restructure and accommodate place just as well as people. I guess there's just doesn't appear to be the commercial market for it. But it's nice to see one or more of these companies take off and really get serious about the place offering.
So, some have got a little bit about place, actually, quite fundamentally, but that's just village. You know, it's not dwelling or street or anything. It's you know, you can.
I'm thinking from that perspective.
Yeah.
Right, we're just over the hour, guys. Do you want to carry on? Or, normally we try and keep it to an hour, but we don't have to.
I'm fine either way.
Okay.
Is there anything else to be said or to?
I think I'm going to have to go fairly soon, I'm afraid.
How are you feeling, Rod?
Isn't that interesting?
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
And Ros, you're looking far better now than you were when you first joined. Obviously, this call has agreed with you.
Yes.
Are you happy then next recording? Broadcast?
I can't hear you very well, you're breaking up. I think I'm going to have to go.
Sorry, Susie.
Are you carrying on?
I think we'll end now, shall we?
Yeah, I think
Okay then.
that's a good idea.
I'll stop the broadcast.
Thank you.